Welcome back to You're All Doomed, the podcast that's been rebooting its way through the Friday the 13th reboot, 13 rebooted minutes at a time. I'm your host, Brian.
I'm stupendous Greg.
This segment begins with Trent and Bree getting it on and ends with Trent looking for something.
While Bree and Trent are upstairs making some bacon, not Kevin Bacon, Lawrence is downstairs enjoying Lucille the bong and finds himself getting horny. So he prepares to jerk off to an LL Bean catalog or something. It's kind of funny that he lands on a page of just a woman drinking coffee and wearing a sweater, but it is kind of ripped off from Something About Mary.
I do like the line he says where he's like, "Lady, I'm about to ruin your perfect day." How long did Lawrence think that Chewie was going to be in the tool shed? Because he just stepped out of the house and now he's getting ready to whack off. He's like, feels like he's going to have at least a few minutes to himself.
Yeah, because Chewie didn't take the chair with him. He was just going to get the tools and then come back to fix the chair. I mean, maybe Lawrence is a fast action man and he can get his business done as long as there's a lady with a sweater. Jenna and Clay arrive in a panic and immediately call the police.
Did you notice that when Clay picks up the phone to call the cops, he goes, "Yeah, I want to report a homicide." Like, who says that? Like, if you were in a panic and you were calling the cops, would you be like, "Yes, I would like to report a vehicular accident that took place on the asphalt"? But regardless, Clay's actions worked because the cops say that they're going to be sending someone over to the house shortly. We then head over to Trent's bedroom where Bree and Trent are bumping uglies while Bree records everything on her little video camera. Trent is obsessed with Bree's boobs. He says, "Your tits are stupendous. Your tits are just so juicy, dude. You have perfect nipple placement," and that her tits would win a fucking titty contest.
I mean, yeah,
let me go on the record as saying I do not disagree with any of these statements, but
absolutely. She is a very visually appealing young lady. It's weird that he's being so analytical in the midst of flagrante delicto. It's humorous as hell, and I give the actor a lot of credit because it's so bizarre. It's funny. It's also the most graphic sex scene we've had in this series.
Big time, yeah. The only other one that came to mind quite often, actually, was the scene from Part 5 in the woods when I'm blanking on the guy's name, but when the weird dude is like spying on them through the woods.
Right. Jenna learns that Trent is in the bedroom with Bree, but I really like that she's much more worried about Jason being on their tail than she is about Trent boning another girl.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Jason sees Bree cowgirling through the window, but turns his attention to the lights on in the equipment shed.
In that equipment shed, Chewie and his drunk ass are making a mess of the place. First, he's dribbling a basketball and knocking all kinds of things over. Then he finds a hockey stick, which he says curves to the left, just like his penis.
He also says this is a real man's sport, which is kind of a diss on basketball. Now, as a fan of Blades of Steel over Double Dribble on Nintendo, I kind of agree, but it just seemed like an unnecessary dig.
Yeah. He starts to swing the hockey stick around and he smashes one of the hanging lamps. And as he's trying to clean up the glass, Jason walks up behind him. Chewie hilariously tries to hand him the hockey stick and says, "Are you looking for this? Because it completes your outfit."
That made my wife laugh. She actually liked it. It's not bad. It's not as goofy as some of that is one pissed off goalie from Freddy versus Jason and such. I don't know that I loved it, but it didn't bother me.
I realize that he's drunk, but would you be able to make a joke like this if you were in a situation where like some giant dude snuck up on you?
No, there's no way he thought it was one of his friends or anything. Like, this is a strange, huge man looming out of the darkness. I don't care how drunk you are. I doubt you would be that quip.
That's what I thought too. But Jason already thinks that his outfit is complete, so he pushes Chewie against a wall of hanging tools. He's briefly able to fight off Jason, but as we all know, Jason is just messing with Chewie. He grabs a long Phillips head screwdriver, It's kind of hard to tell because the lights are flickering, but that's what I got out of it. And he very slowly sticks it through Chewie's throat until he dies.
Even worse, Chewie grabs the screwdriver and tries to use it to defend himself, but Jason grabs Chewie's arm and forces Chewie to stab himself.
Oh, I don't know if I picked up on that.
It's vicious.
Oh, that is brutal.
Chewie was played by Aaron Yu, who appeared in Disturbia and Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, and has an uncredited role in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake from a year after this movie. He's still working and around a lot, and has a pretty badass headshot on IMDb. While Chewie is being murdered, Whitney has somehow made it to this exact house, even though she had no idea that there was anybody around, and was not familiar with this area to even know which direction to run in. She hits the window just as Bree and Trent orgasm, but that exact moment, Jason appears and grabs her, covering her mouth and hauling her away in the woods, so her escape was completely fruitless. This whole sequence is totally garbled.
Yeah, I have two different thoughts about this. So, first, I don't remember Whitney escaping at all. And I have seen this since we saw it in the theater, so I can't make that excuse. But so, aside from forgetting that the scene even happened, you're right. It's completely pointless. And when it all unfolded, and after coming to the realization that I had forgotten about this scene, and then it all unfolded, I'm like, well, then what was even the point of it? Like, she just escaped, like, briefly. I mean, like, nothing happened. Nothing in the story changed. It was really just giving her more screen time. But the one thing I do like about it, the one redeeming quality for me, is when she goes up to the window and, like, she's either, like, just about to pound on the window, or she actually gets 1 pound on the window in before Jason grabs her and pulls her back, and Trent and Bree can't hear it or see her. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. It's like you're so close to freedom, or at least safety, and she just gets pulled back by Jason, like, literally into the darkness. And then, but the whole scene is just pointless.
Yeah, I mean, it to me, it feels like, one of those things where they, like I said, they felt they needed a little more time with Whitney in the story. But when they shot it, they realized exactly the same things that we were saying and decided to cut it from the theatrical version. But they always intended to have an unrated, extended cut on home video for people to enjoy. But the expanded moments of gore weren't enough to justify a truly different cut of the film. So they had to have some semi-substantial piece of story to reinsert, and this was the only thing that was even long enough to stretch the running time out a little bit.
I'm just surprised they didn't handle it a little bit differently, because whether this scene is in the movie or not does not change the outcome of the movie. So it's like, well, what was the point of it other than screen time? So it's like, maybe they could have, like, maybe she could have warned someone and said, hey, there's this guy that kidnapped me. He's using tunnels. And at least then it attracts that group of people to the tunnels to try to save her. And then it's a different...
That's exactly what I was just going to say, is this would have been perfectly fine as is if she had left something behind that Clay could have found to realize that his sister is still alive.
Like the backpack.
Like,
hey, you lost this backpack and now it's back.
And so she's at the camp. We have to go back to the camp because there's actually no reason they go back to the camp later on anyway. So this would have answered that. And I liked the moment you pointed out about her hitting the window and, just about to be to safety. That's great. It's just, it fizzles because this is so pointless.
The power has now gone out at Trent's house. Bree and Trent are back in the main room with Jenna, Lawrence, and Clay. Trent is pissed that Clay is back in the house and tells him and Jenna to get the fuck out. Clay's trying to explain that there's a killer out there and he's the one who cut the lights. And then in the background, you see Lawrence grab a big, like, nonstick pan and what looks like a fire poker and a flashlight from the kitchen.
And I like that he puts the pan on his arm like a little shield.
Yeah.
I'm actually really disappointed that there's no payoff for that. He winds up dropping it later. he heroically is going to go down to retrieve his friend Chewie, who he unfortunately doesn't realize has already been killed. But it's pretty brave of the guy, and I like the loyalty there. He makes it down to the equipment shed and pokes around a little bit, checking inside a coffin-sized freezer, which is mercifully empty, except that Chewie's body then drops down in front of him in true Pamela Voorhees style. Jason is there and takes a few swings at him, but Lawrence manages to fend him off and hauls ass back to the house.
Jason is close behind, though, knocking over all the shelves as he chases after Lawrence. On his way out the door, Jason grabs an axe, and we get a good glimpse of Jason in a full-on sprint for really the first time that we've seen him do this. But Lawrence is still a good 20 yards ahead. Jason is smart enough to realize that he's not going to catch Lawrence before he makes it back to Trent's house. So Jason overhands the axe, launching it end over end until it lands in Lawrence's spine. He's not dead, but he's in really bad shape.
It was a beautiful shot. How do you feel about Jason running so fast?
I don't have a problem with it. I know a lot of people that don't like this movie have a problem with Jason running. If he was sprinting around all the time, then I would probably have an issue with it. But when it's required, I don't have an issue with it. Like, no one ever said that Jason can't run. We just haven't seen him run. And he was in the middle of this fight with Lawrence, and Lawrence managed to break free. So of course he's going to chase after him.
I love it. I mean, we have seen Jason run before. He ran a lot in part 2. He ran a lot in part 4. It was really kind of the later years, especially when Kane Hodder was playing him, that Jason would not run. And I think he's marching with purpose in part 6, but he tends to play it pretty slow after part 4. But I love it. And I think it keeps him unique from Michael Myers, who is such an emotionless killing machine, like a shark or something, that it makes sense for Michael to be much more purposeful and slow in his movements, more calculating. Jason, I can see being gripped by rage enough to book after someone when the situation arises. I wouldn't want it to be his primary mode of locomotion. If we see him running everywhere he goes, it'd be silly. But I mean, I think it's scary as hell to see him charging after Lawrence like that.
Even though my wife's favorite kill was the Chelsea dock kill, when Jason chucked the axe and it was flying through the air and landed in Lawrence's back. My wife let out this like gleeful, like kind of laugh, and she's like, "Whoa!" And I was like, "Yeah, that's my girl."
You're a lucky man, Brian. You're a lucky man. Everyone in the house hears Lawrence's screams of agony, but Clay won't let them go help. He says Jason is using Lawrence as bait, which is freaking awesome.
I love this tactic, and this is something that we hadn't seen either. It's there's strategy involved in what Jason's doing. We've seen in earlier movies where traps have been set, where there's like bodies that strategically fall down from rafters and tree branches and things like that. But none of these were actually used to like capture people. I think they're more just like scare tactics. But this is like, he knows Lawrence isn't dead. He can very easily just go over and take care of him immediately. But he also knows that there's a house full of friends that are potentially going to come after him, because Lawrence came after Chewie. So why wouldn't the other friends come after Lawrence? So using him as bait is awesome. I think my only complaint about this is how quickly Clay identifies that he's being used as bait. Mm-hmm. I would have liked the audience to have a little bit of time to kind of process it and realize what's happening. Because it's like, you hear him screaming and then almost immediately Clay's like, "No, don't go out there. He's using him as bait." It's like, I would have liked to have like, give me a minute where you hear him screaming and you're thinking like, well, why isn't Jason killing him? This is weird. Like, why doesn't he just take care of him? And then it's like, oh shit, he's using him as bait.
Really nice point. Really nice point. I think that's a serious problem that this movie has, is that it tries to rush things a little bit too much. And we're going to start to see that things get pretty sloppy because they're moving so fast. In any case, when nobody comes, Jason impatiently pulls Lawrence up, turns him around, and then hurls him back down on the axe, which goes all the way through Lawrence's body. Lawrence was played by Arlen Escarpeta, who was in Final Destination 5 and played Bobby Brown in a movie about Whitney Houston that was directed by Angela Bassett.
And most importantly, he was born on April 9th, just like me.
Oh, and Jenna Jameson.
Of course, Jenna Jameson. And Hugh Hefner, who had a competing magazine with Hustler.
That was started. I never did learn what the prison pussy was all about. Was that like a dude who was really weak-willed in prison, or was it about like hooking up with girls? And we can go back. So even though he has just killed Lawrence down, by the woodpile or whatever, we see Jason up on the roof of the house. How did he get there? Why is he up there? It's a cool shot, but it's just kind of, huh?
That's all it is. It's just a cinematic shot. It makes no sense that he's up there. There's no evidence of like how he would go there, but he's also just like, he's posing up there. It's not like he's on the roof, like in the process of climbing through a window or something. So we're like, oh, okay, he's doing something. Like he's just standing there like, look how badass I am.
Mm-hmm.
It almost reminded me of the scene in Jason Lives where he pops out of the flaming RV and he's just kind of like standing on the top, and we get that really cool shot of him. But yeah, there's no point to it. So it's just...
yeah, at least with that one, it was sort of like him climbing up and going like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, I survived the wreck. Trent picks up the phone one more time and realizes that it's still not working, so he heads upstairs and pulls a gun out of one of the dresser drawers. It's a Sig Sauer P226 semi-automatic 9mm, and it carries 15 rounds. Bree has also run upstairs, presumably looking for Trent, and that's where this segment ends.
We lost 2 people this time, the pals Chewie and Lawrence.
To find out whose nipple placement would win a titty contest, tune in next week for another episode of You're All Doomed.
I vote for me.